All right. So we have former NFL quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, Green Bay Packers, San Francisco 49ers, now turned content creator, and also the owner of Dime Lab Football.
Let's go.
Which I used this for the first time, Kurt, on Super Bowl Sunday and with the boys. And I will say, like, this is the best backyard football I've ever used.
Let's go, dude. What did the boys think? They loved it?
They loved it.
Yeah.
It's, like, insane. I kind of want to start with that what is the process of what was, like, the process of, like, creating this ball, and, like, what was your thought process of actually starting this business?
Yeah. So when I got out of the NFL, we moved to Santa Rosa Beach, Florida, which is where we live now. And we were renting before we found out like where exactly we wanted to buy. So we lived in this like cul-de-sac of townhomes, and we had neighbors that we were friends with, and they have young boys. So they would come out and like want to throw the ball around, of course. And they brought these like cheap ass Franklin footballs every day. And then they'd leave them outside and they'd get like really slick. And it got to a point where I was like, I don't even want to like throw these footballs with these kids because I can't make it spiral, let alone like it looks terrible for them. So I had my business partner with the Dime Lab who helped me start the company. He exited his company like 5 years ago and has just been kind of like doing fun stuff. And I knew that he had a background in sourcing products. So I went to him and I was like, look, dude, I really think if we started a football company, if we can like nail the product, I think the rest will work itself out. And so we just went on the hunt, and I told him I want a football that has indoor-outdoor basketball feel, but is more tacky out of the box, because there's a real problem with footballs that like you have to prep, and like no footballs that you buy on the market are really tacky. The GST like composite balls are at first, but that leather's kind of cheap that they use, unless you're buying the real deal, have an equipment staff that's doing the footballs all the time. So that was the process behind making it. We went through a bunch of different prototypes, and we actually started with this water ball, which is like microfiber with silicone strips where like your fingers go. So like right-handed, left-handed, no matter how big or small, there's like grip for you. So that was like the first one, but then they gave us this sample of this leather that they were like, hey, this shit's expensive, but it sounds like what you actually want. And so we said screw it and did an order of 500 of them and sold out, and then we started scaling. So we went through, fixed all the problems with like traditional footballs you buy out of the box, and then tried to make them feel more like NFL footballs, minus how hard NFL footballs can be. That leather can hurt your hands pretty bad if you're not wearing gloves. So yeah, I think we just kind of fell into the right place at the right time and went for it.
Do you think maybe in the future is your plan, or do you think it would be possible for like, let's say Pop Warner football or for high school to use a ball like this, or do you think they won't be as open to it? Because it is really good, but I could see them saying how much of an advantage it can be.
Totally. We're actually working on that certification process now, and we're piloting getting a traditional brown football with white laces. So we'll keep like the stitching on the stripe, but we're going to remove the stripe, make it just brown. The stitching will go over there, and then a white lace, but the same material. And basically the submission process is there's this like, I don't know, board that you have to send the footballs to, and they spec them out and then say yes or no. And I actually think that the leather is not going to get denied. I think it's more going to be about like the sizing of it and the weight that we have to make sure is identical, because there are women's leagues now that have already started using our football versus the other ones. And flag football leagues are starting to adopt it too. So it's like, it is becoming the preferred ball to use across the board. It's just I didn't realize how many regulatory processes there are in place for a football to be standard. So we're going down that path now. We'll make a traditional high school size, which is the same as college. They're both size 9. And then we're going to start with a youth size 6, which is like peewee football. And so we're going to start in those two places, see what the order volume looks like. But there are high schools that have already bought our footballs to use as their practice balls, because if you buy a $150 to $200 leather football and you use it in the rain, it's done. Especially in high school. Like they don't have the equipment to fix those. So we had like 3 or 4 high schools buy 10 of them, and they're just rotating them through because they dry out really well. So I've learned so much in this past like 9 months of the football industry, but it's been cool to piggyback that with my content.
Well, I think it was the Bucks this year, right? That they posted the media clip of their equipment dudes like prepping the balls for a game day.
Dude, it's crazy.
It's a ton of work. I was like, my goodness.
Well, they have like 10 to 15 full-time employees that is one of the roles that everyone knows how to do in the equipment staff. And it's just like, hey, by game day, you walk, like as a quarterback, like the starter walks into the equipment room. There's 100 footballs laid out that are all prepped, and then they handpick their favorite 10 to 20 for game balls. Where I'm like, they spent hours to get these 100 footballs ready, and only 10 to 20 are like qualified for like a quarterback to want to throw. Because every football, as you know, their shapes are different. Some have laces that were woven more tight, less tight, whatever. So that's like kind of where all this came from. Like I got tired of buying a Duke football, taking it to the beach with my friends, and them ruining it. But also, it was never prepped out of the box. I didn't want to buy wax and scrub it. I'm like, I don't want to do this every single time. So it's definitely a luxury of college football and NFL to not have to do that because you have equipment guys that do it. But when you talk about high school and Pop Warner, we'd get a ball out of the box and my coach would immediately take it to the parking lot and like scrub it on the gravel to try to get it scuffed up so you can at least grip it. So, yeah, there's a ball problem. So we're trying to fix the ball problem.
Yeah. That's insane. Yeah, I used to work for the Baltimore Ravens, and I would see the equipment staff like actually go through their process like with these it was an insane thing to watch. You wouldn't know if nobody ever showcased it. So
no,
it's actually insane. So I guess my other question would be, when you were in the NFL and you weren't obviously a starter at the time, would you still go and look for footballs that fit you, or would you just use whatever was given to you?
Oh, dude, I was cherry picking out of the ball bag. Like,
oh, really?
Everybody did. Like, even the quarterback ball bag. Like, they tried to keep them prepped as often as possible. But if we had I remember in Green Bay, we had a quarterback drill every Friday that was like target practice into a net. We'd go 20, 40, 50, whatever, and we'd do different drops. Like, Aaron was cherry picking his favorite ball. I was cherry picking mine. Jordan was cherry picking his. Like, and we all had similar like ball tastes. It was like get the best ball out of the bag as quick as you can. So it is one of those things. Like some quarterbacks do prefer like a little bit of a softer, rounded ball, where some like the ones that have the edges that feel like they're more squared off, which that's like my preference. But like universally, they all love raised like tall laces, because that's like, no matter what the ball feels like, if you have really thick laces, you can grip it, and especially when it's cold and wet. And so that's like the number one thing we went through. Like these water balls, we put like the expensive laces on them. I don't know if you can tell, but like they're raised up to where the other ones are really flush, and like you can't really spiral a ball, especially when it's wet, if the laces are flush. So yeah, there's just little nuances to it that I'm like, if we just make a good product, people will enjoy it, and then word of mouth will go, because you have to throw a football with a friend for the most part. So yeah,
exactly. So the draft is coming up. We just had the combine. So I wanted to talk about your process, because you had a unique process compared to a lot of people, which there are a ton of people who are undrafted free agents. Yeah. But I wanted to know your process in the draft and what that was like. And if you talked to any teams and you thought you were going to get drafted, or if there were certain teams that you were like, oh, I'm definitely going there. What was the process like for you?
Yeah, it was really unique. So my draft class was, I think, like the most loaded quarterback draft class of all time, in my opinion. It was Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, Sam Darnold, Rosen, Mason Rudolph, and like a handful of others. And for me, like my film, like my highs were really high, but my lows were like, I was a gunslinger, was risky, threw the ball into triple coverage if I had to. Like I had no regard for football. But that's just how I grew up playing. And where I found myself in college was in similar mindsets. Like when I was at UVA, our defense wasn't that good that year. We had a few defensive guys that were going to go to the NFL, but like the drop off was big. And same with our offense. Like we had no NFL offensive linemen. We just had a couple skill players. So I just knew if we were in close games, like we were probably gonna have to find a way to do it on offense. So I lived with that mentality the whole time that I played, where once you get in the NFL, it's not like that. Like you do your job and you hope you win. Like honestly, that's what Matt Ryan told me. You do your job, you can only control so much, but like when you try to do too much, you'll probably make matters worse. And I was like, you know what? There's some realness to that. The defense gets paid too. If you're turning the ball over in the NFL, you're losing games. There is just no way around it. So all that to say, I knew I had upside. I knew people saw the upside, but I was a risky pick. So I was like, maybe I'll be a late round draft pick. Maybe I won't. I had teams call me in the 5th, the 6th, and it was just like, hey, if you're up, we're going to take you. And then they didn't. And so all the way through, I knew I was going to be like mid to late round. Ended up going undrafted, but the draft class was crazy. Like having 5 guys go in the first round at quarterback is pretty bizarre. And after the draft, I had Atlanta call me, the Chiefs call me, and Tampa Bay call me. And so I picked Atlanta at the time because Jameis Winston was the quarterback at Tampa Bay, and he was kind of up in the air, whatever. And I knew that like my success in the NFL was going to come down to my first few years, how much I could learn, because I knew nothing. Like, played in an air raid scheme. Everything was spatial awareness and seeing the field that way, not X's and O's and like cover two. There's the like, it wasn't like that. And so you heard Patrick Mahomes talk about how he didn't know how to read a defense like the NFL way his first year. It's because he came in an air raid system. Could sling it, could run around, but like he had to really learn football. And so the Chiefs were another option, but this guy, Patrick Mahomes, had never played. He was raw, gunslinger. I'm like, I don't need to learn under him. Like, I need to go learn under Matt Ryan, like how to play in the West Coast way where I can really string out my career and do it the right way. Obviously, if I would have went to the Chiefs, maybe would have got a ring or something. But I think like for getting my 5 years, especially being an undrafted guy, a lot of that came to the fact that my first 3 in Atlanta, I had the best quarterback coach that would put as much time into me as I asked, and he taught me everything across the board. And it's why like I'm able to teach the way I do now online, because if you asked me 6 years ago, could I do any of this? Like, no way in hell. I was just a gunslinger. So yeah, that's kind of how my draft process went, how I slid to the end, and then where I decided ultimately where I wanted to go.
Did you feel like the gunslinger mentality kind of I guess, transition to Green Bay because, you know, we're talking about Rodgers and Favre and the history that they have at quarterback. Yeah. And I feel like that kind of fit that mold.
Oh, dude, totally. When I got to Green Bay, I was like, this is it. Like, this is the fit. I thought I was going to be there for years, to be honest. And the GM loved me. When he brought me in for the workout, he was like, hey, I've had my eye on you since 2018. I just knew we needed to clean you up a little bit. So he let me get cleaned up in Atlanta for 3 years, and then I was in Green Bay. So it was good, but I ended up just not really fitting with the staff. It's already on the internet. Like, me and LaFleur kind of butted heads a lot. But I was doing all of this stuff that I'm doing now while I was playing. And I wasn't a 17-year vet. That was my 4th year in the league, but I saw like the vision of what I wanted my like career to look like, but it never took away from what I was doing on the field. Like, I was always practicing really well, playing well, like especially in Green Bay. And it was just one of those things where like he wanted me to kind of sit in my place and do my thing and be that backup quarterback that's like the Belichick type of guy. But I'm like, I'm not ever going to be that person. I'm not that person. Like, I want to start businesses and like that's what I want to do. Other people watch Netflix all day long. I was gaming and streaming and teaching, and like that's what I was doing. So it just wasn't a good fit. But when I got released from there, I was shocked because I was like, dude, I walked up to the GM's office and I was like, there's no way you can tell me that I wasn't playing the best I've ever played since I've been here. And like, what's the deal? And the GM straight up told me, hey, there's some coaches on the staff that wanted to go in a different direction. I was like, that's all I needed to hear. So that for me was where it was like, all right, the NFL is not exactly what I thought it was. I still loved it, but I knew that there was a game to be played inside of it that I wasn't willing to play. And I said F it and started going into media full time. And then the Niners called me, and I'd already like been like, look, I'm in media, but they called. I went on the workout and ended up getting the job. So I put media on hold again while I was with the 49ers for a couple months. And then when it was done again, I got cut like in November, I believe. Went back. I'm like, all right, this time for real, I'm doing media. I'm not like doing anything else. Yeah. And then the Vikings called, and they called me like 2 days before Christmas, and I was just like, my wife will kill me. I've already like I'm this close to like taking things to the next level. I want to start businesses. I want to do YouTube, all this other stuff. Where like you can't do that if you're a backup's backup in the league, and like you can't have a voice. It's just you can't do it. So I know I went a little bit over there, but that's kind of how I got to where all this is now. Like, I just had to take a leap of faith.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess my question is, with so many quarterbacks and so many players now actually getting into media, do you think that NFL teams care like about them being,
unfortunately?
No. Do you think like even if a practice squad guy was doing it, do you think there would be a conversation, or do they just let them do whatever they want now?
Some old school coaches for sure would not be cool with a practice squad guy doing it, and they'd let it slide for the other guys. There's some younger coaches that like, dude, I have coaches every day hit me up like, dude, I just saw your videos, like fucking sick. You're nailing it. The other guys, the football company, like we just bought one. My kids love it. They're slinging it around. Like, I have so many coaches in the league and like front office people that were aware of what I was doing and liked it, but they weren't the guys, right? Like they were position coaches or whatever. But eventually they'll be OCs and eventually maybe head coaches. But like Dan Quinn texted me the other day about the book that I launched. And he's like, dude, that's so freaking cool. Like, way to pay it forward. Like, I know it took a lot of time, et cetera. Can't wait to buy the digital or the physical copy. And I'm like, Dan Quinn is about to go to the combine, do all these interviews, and he's texting me. But we spent 3 years together. So it's like some coaches really love how I'm using the platform to teach football and push things forward. And at the same time, like, I'm going to have to say my honest opinion on coaches and players as they're doing things and as I see it, because that's part of the role, being, I guess, media analyst in a way. But more people than not love it. Some people couldn't stand it, and that's just how life is.
Tyler?
Yeah, I'll hop into it right away. Let's talk about some of the time, in Green Bay.
Yeah.
How I know, obviously, we've gotten your opinion on the floor, but how was Rodgers and Love for that opinion as well? Because I know that you spent some time there, and I guess what went into that decision of picking Green Bay. I know talking about what went into the decision of picking Atlanta.
Yeah.
But did you feel like that was kind of the best opportunity to learn, was to be under Rodgers, or how was that relationship as well?
Yeah. The relationship with Aaron and Jordan, amazing. Like, Aaron still texts me, still hit up Jordan from time to time. Like, those guys, they were so good to me, and they also appreciated like what I did off the field during the time. I will say with LaFleur too, like, I do love how LaFleur approaches like ball. Like, even though like we don't personality-wise see eye to eye, he cares a shit ton about football, and he cares a shit ton about what the product looks like, and he's a perfectionist. And so like, I want to give my hat off to him for like that stuff. People are people, like, everybody's got their own whatever. But I will say, like, he's obsessed over the details, and he wants to be great. And I love that for him. I think it's awesome. So I wanted to just definitely clear that up.
Yeah, for sure.
But going to Green Bay for me, so I got released from Atlanta when Dan Quinn got fired. They brought in Arthur Smith, who I can't stand. And they brought in his ass.
In Atlanta a lot longer.
Dude, yeah, I would have, to be honest. So they brought him in. I was out, and now I was like, okay, I'm going to get some tryouts, going to get some workouts, but the way that it works when you're a vet, you get invited to rookie mini camps. Is like, there's a couple vet quarterbacks they bring in from time to time. It's like a workout with receivers, essentially, and potentially some defense. So I could have went to Cleveland, or I could have went to Green Bay. And I was like, the chance to go be in Green Bay with the Packers, potentially step foot in Lambeau, like, do like the football, like,
Bucket
thing,
list.
right? That's the bucket list. The football bucket list is playing for the Packers in Lambeau. And I was like, if you even tell me there's a small chance that happens, like, I'm going to go send it. And that was the year that Aaron was holding out for his big contract after he won MVP. The third MVP? The 2020 MVP, where it was COVID year. And so they brought in Blake Bortles. They had Jordan Love, and then they brought in me as a camp arm. We got all the way through OTAs, and I was doing pretty well, trying to catch up with the offense. But like, I got 1 rep a day. That's it, because they were giving Blake all the reps. And then we got to training camp, and it was going to be me and Blake battling for that 3rd spot, and then the other 2 were going to get most of the reps anyways, Jordan and Aaron, because Aaron came back from his contract. And walked in day 1, and they were like, all right, we're sending Blake home. You're getting all the 3s in training camp. And I was like, holy shit, I don't even have to compete. Like, this is amazing. At first, I thought it was amazing, and then I was like, damn, like, wait, I'm not competing for anything. Like, I'm just going to be the 3. And then I realized really quick, fuck, there's no path to the 53-man roster, because they have 2 first-round quarterbacks. And, like, Aaron's the Hall of Famer. Jordan's the first rounder that's new. Like, it became very clear to me, like, wait a minute. Fuck, I'm going to be the practice squad guy again, even though I'm the number 3. And so, as exciting as it was also like this, okay, I know what my role is going to be. There's no, like, ascending in your career from this without somebody getting hurt. So it was just very quickly excited, then very quickly like, all right, let's just go have fun this year, because there's nothing else I can do to like go forward, but at least I can like build my other stuff at the same time while also being ready in case somebody gets hurt. So that's how the decision came for me to get there. But yeah, it's like anything else. It was super exciting at first, and then you're like, all right, there's got to be more.
So obviously didn't regret the decision for Green Bay over Cleveland.
Oh no, thank God. Yeah, no, it's that honestly it was such a pivotal point in like my life and like changing the trajectory of what I was doing on social media. Anyways, that it was the Green Bay fan base is insane, and it was just a massive launch pad for like anything I wanted to do in the future.
Right.
So it was really cool.
So I have to ask, because it's a conversation every single year. Truthfully, in your opinion, what is Aaron Rodgers like as a teammate, and does the media overhype what he does in the offseason? Because half the things you hear, like in Hard Knocks, everybody loves Rodgers, and then you go and hear like Garrett Wilson say, apparently behind closed doors, I'm not going to be back if Aaron's back. So in your personal opinion, how was Aaron Rodgers like as a teammate?
Dude, he was the best. And he treats people right. 2, he demands a shit ton out of you as a player. So like, I don't know Garrett Wilson at all, but I'd imagine he was a little uncomfortable with how much was demanded from him as a player, which if you know how Aaron plays, he's quick signaling things. He's like subtly there's like a game within the game that he's trying to play. And if as a receiver, you're not on that same level, you're not going to have fun. That's why guys like Allen Lazard and obviously Devontae Adams ended up with him, because there's like a whole nother slew of things that he expects, but that's like what makes him as good of a player as he is. And if the guys around him aren't up to that level, then he's not going to be able to show, I guess, what makes him special. Besides his arm. Like, he's got a good arm still, obviously. Like, he can still sling it, but it's like the quick nuances of the game that give you a free 5 to 15 yards that you can't teach, can't coach. It comes from preparation and the fact that he's done it for so long. So he was the most selfless teammate I've ever been around. He looks out for people in numerous ways on and off the field, and he just demands a lot out of people. He's like wants to win a Super Bowl. He doesn't want to go out like he's going out right now. Like, that's not what he wanted. So I'd imagine that for guys like Garrett Wilson, that can be a little bit uncomfortable. I will say too, like, I was in Atlanta with Matt Ryan when things were starting to go that way. And Matt Ryan, 2016 MVP, just almost won a Super Bowl. 2017, they go to the playoffs, losing Philly on a jump ball that they just didn't land. And then 2018 comes around and I'm the rookie. And I'm like, fuck, dude, like, this team's good. Like, it's going to be fun. We're going to go on a playoff run. And then we suck. And then 2019 comes around and we suck. And then 2020 comes around and we really suck. And everyone gets fired. Matt has one more year's let go. Like, Matt was not fun to be around at all. Like, especially midway through the season. When the excitement of this team, of the, like, year league was coming along, he was fun to be around. But as soon as, like, shit got rolling and went south, like, nobody wants to be around the quarterback that's miserable because they're losing, but, like, they take all the blame, whether it's right or wrong. Like, and if you watch the film even of this past year with Aaron, he played so well, in my opinion, compared to everything else that went around him. The defense couldn't stop a nosebleed most games. They couldn't kick field goals. They lost 3 or 4 games that should have been wins off of chip shot field goals.
The Broncos game, I remember, like, vividly.
Like, literally, it's
3.
You do, like, imagine doing your job and putting in, like, 70-something hours of work in 1 week to, like, get to the point where it should be automatic and it's not 4 times in a season. That shit wears on people. So I'd imagine he wasn't as fun to be around because all shit was breaking loose. And then you got guys at receiver and even running backs that are fumbling more often than not, dropping passes. It's like, I'd imagine he was like, show up and do your fucking job. Yeah. And that, as a young player, when you're 25, I don't know how old Garrett Wilson is, you probably are like, dude, fucking retire. Like, I got a lot more ball left to play. And Garrett Wilson will get better, in my opinion, as his career goes on. But it's tough when you got an old guy that's like knows he doesn't have much time and these young guys that just can't fucking get it together because it's just that disconnect. And it's like, I don't know, that's a tough thing to navigate. Same thing. I mean, I dealt with it in Atlanta. We had these young knucklehead receivers that fucking run a wrong route and Matt Ryan's losing it on them. And I'm like, fuck, dude, Matt, lay off. But then I'm like, he's got 1 more year left and he put his whole life into this. So, like, just run the fucking right route. I don't know.
Do you think with Aaron in New York, do you think that maybe it was a lot to do with not having the right coach or the right, like, mentor for these young guys? Mm-hmm. And also, do you feel like Aaron might fit somewhere with more veterans instead of younger guys? Because he's been around younger guys since his last, like, years in Green Bay, and I feel like he might be sick of it. Like, that's why he likes to bring his own guys, it feels like. Yeah,
that's a tough one. I think Aaron, I really wish that he would have went to LA. I wish that they didn't re-sign Stafford because I was like, damn, if he's going to make a run anywhere, it's going to be there. It's a good team. They're, like, seasoned. Their defense is young and good. Like, the receivers are dogs. I'm not going to lie. I could really see him going back to Minnesota. And I know that he would prefer to go somewhere warm, but at least they're indoors. And I would not be shocked to see that happen, especially with them letting Sam Darnold hit the market. I'm like, if you look at, like, Minnesota's roster situation, it's a freaking dream for a quarterback.
Yeah.
Like, I could go out there today. Let me loosen up my hammies and throw for probably 200 yards of Justin Jefferson. Like maybe a pick or two, but I'm going to get you 200 yards passing guaranteed. And I think that you look at a guy like Aaron who understands the NFC North, has a team that like just went the distance. And Sam Darnold had a really good year last year, but where he crumbled was like the high pressure situational moments where watch the tape last year, even though the Jets lost those games, Aaron dominated those moments more often than not by getting them into those positions to kick the game-winning field goal. That's what the Vikings were missing. They were missing situational like mastery from a quarterback. I really could see that being the bridge for J.J. McCarthy because J.J. McCarthy, they put first-round pick on. He got hurt. He didn't get to develop last year physically because he was on IR all year. Yeah, he got to watch meetings and shit, but I don't care how long you've played quarterback until you've gone through the reps in practice and then done it in team and 7-on-7, then done it in a preseason and then in a game. That shit doesn't sink in the same way. You can only watch so much and learn you got to do it. So I'd imagine it'd be a really good bridge year for a guy like Aaron to give it one more go, get J.J. McCarthy one more year to develop. And I think Sam Darnold, I'm like huge Sam Darnold truther, but I think he showed like where his limitations lie at the end of the season last year. He can win you 10 games. But I think that Vikings team would win 10 games with a lot of guys at quarterback with Justin Jefferson at receiver, especially Aaron. And I think that's what makes them get over the hump a little bit. So we'll see. I don't know.
I think that I'm a Vikings fan, by the way. Yeah. So like you talking about this, it's making me obviously think Brett Favre 2.0, and obviously we know the Vikings will lose in the NFC Championship game if that happens. But you
feel good though.
Yeah, I don't know what feels good as a Vikings fan anymore. But the one thing I will say about that makes a lot of sense, is Sam Darnold's going to want a long-term contract now, whereas Rodgers probably got, is going to be a year, 2-year type of contract, which, like you said, would be a great bridge for JJ. So obviously I've heard people in the media talking about it, but as you're breaking it down more and more, it makes perfect sense. And the weapons that are there, the offensive line is pretty solidified as well. So you've got the pieces there. The only thing you're missing, like you said, is that game changer at quarterback.
Not to mention Devontae Adams is about to get cut.
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, and Addison on the field at the same time with Aaron?
I'd rather not.
I mean,
I'd rather not.
Like that's
just keep spoon fooding me right now.
I mean,
Perry.
dude,
this is great.
It's very big, much man. Like if you're not paying Sam Darnold $50 million a year, you could probably get Aaron on you could get Aaron and Devontae Adams for cheaper than Sam Darnold per year.
Yeah, because they're both getting paid no matter what from the Jets.
So, I mean, go the Steelers route. Get two guys that you're paying $1 million each and see what happens. But go and get the quarterback and the receiver that will elevate you further than what Sam Darnold could. I'm not like, if I ever go back into the league and go into the front office route out when I'm done with content, like I want to go the GM route because it's like, I don't know why some people can't see it from like a 3,000 like height view. If you look at the Vikings, in my opinion, why would you pay Sam Darnold 50, 55 million? Why would you do that when Tua just got 55 million? Like I think Jordan Love that he got paid, but I think he got overpaid. And everyone's like, oh, you got to pay your quarterback. I'm like, bullshit, dude. Look at Brock Purdy. Look at Sam Darnold last year. Look at Justin Fields. I'd rather have Justin Fields last year for $10 million than a lot of those $55 million a year quarterbacks. And that's just if you have a good team, it elevates the quarterback. If you have a bad team, your quarterback can't elevate shit. They need people around him. There's Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and like Jaden Daniels maybe, and probably Kyler Murray, in my opinion, are the quarterbacks in the league that like can make a really ugly situation look better. And Kyler like barely can do it. But I also think if you throw Kyler Murray with the Detroit Lions, I think he's better than Goff. Yeah. And it's like people want to pay their quarterbacks $55 million a year, $60 million a year, whatever. I'm like, dude, wait for free agency, get a guy that's on the back end, but you have to have a good team. You can't have a bad O-line and you can't have a bad defensive line. That's like these teams that are going the distance every year. Like, do you really think Jalen Hurts is the best quarterback in the NFL?
No.
Like, no. If you put Jalen Hurts on the Carolina Panthers, everyone would be calling for his head.
Easy.
You know what I mean? I'm just saying. And nothing against Jalen Hurts. I think he played tremendous down the stretch this past year. Like, he really did. But he would tell you, too, he needed his guys around him. So I just think these pay your quarterback $60 million, whatever, there's better ways to do it. And if I'm the Vikings, I'm licking my chops right now because it looks like a package deal could be coming right down the door.
Well, surely that's why they're letting Sam hit the market too, because there's like he's not going to go out there and find a $55 million contract. Like
No
I think
chance.
if anyone was going to give it to him, it'd be the Vikings because they had success with him. So do you think maybe they're just like, go see what you can find, and once you realize that you're not worth 30, come back and we'll sign you on a 2-year for $30 million?
You know what's crazy though? Like some of these busted teams will just pay him.
There's no way, man.
I don't know what the Cleveland
Vegas.
Browns cap situation looks like. The Vegas Raiders. You can't tell me that Vegas wouldn't be happy to not have Aiden O'Connell throwing for them. Like you got to think about some of these situations that do exist. You have the Titans, like gross situation. The Browns, awful situation. I mean, the Steelers, in my opinion, should bring Justin Fields back, and he should have been starting the whole year. I said that from preseason. Like, everyone was on this Russ Cook, whatever. I'm like, dude, I don't care that he's a better thrower slightly than Justin Fields, but in the modern NFL, you've got to have a guy like him that can go make plays in the AFC North. And I don't know, man. There's budgets to be had everywhere at quarterback that I'm like, I loved Sam Darnold for $10 million. Loved it last year. Absolutely loved it. Could not pay me to pay him $55 million. No way in hell.
Well, I'm gonna need you to talk me into Justin Fields. Now I am a Ravens fan, so bias out of it. When I watch Fields, because I watch film, but obviously probably not definitely not how you watch it, is what do you see with Fields that makes you so confident in him? Because my problem with Fields is that I feel like he cannot read a defense at a very high level. I feel like he can make plays with his legs, and there are some splash plays when you do have Fields. But the entire reason why I saw Pittsburgh go to Russ was because Fields was not elevating the offense towards the level that it could have been. And Russ did do that for like 6 weeks. And obviously the moonball stuff, defenses started to figure it out.
Yeah.
But with Justin Fields, I'm just like, this guy is missing wide open receivers. Like, what do you see from him that makes you excited to maybe bring him back to Pittsburgh?
So as much as he missed guys, he also did hit them. But the hits, in my opinion, get forgotten because of the misses. So if you look at like what actually happened and take it play by play, if Justin Fields could take any bit of moonball out of Russ's bag, and if Russ didn't complete 2 or 3 of those moonballs, his entire media perception this year is entirely different. Not to mention, in my opinion, George Pickens is probably the most talented receiver in the league besides Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, but is in that category of talent. Consistency, no. Persona, no. But if the ball's in the air and George Pickens is around, he's probably going to catch it. And I think that Justin Fields was trying to be too perfect too soon and was worried about getting benched for Russ. He was trying to be perfect. I think if Justin Fields was committed to as the guy, you would have seen a less timid version of him, which I really believe that's true. And if you add in the fact that every single time the game got in crunch time on 3rd or 4th down, they put Russ on the bench and brought Justin Fields back in, you can win games with him. And you can win games in crunch time. And yeah, it'll look a little different. The way that the Eagles won games this year with Jalen Hurts at some points was gross, running the ball. Jalen Hurts, there were games he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, especially when it got colder. Okay, other quarterbacks don't look so great in the cold either. It's just amplified when it's one of these guys. But I promise you, Justin Fields and a ground and pound offense can get you 5 or 6 yards a pop, which at the end of the day, if you just break the game of football down into one play at a time, can Justin Fields get you 4 yards on every single play? I'd say, yeah, he can in some way, shape, or form. He'll miss some throws here or there, but dude, Russell Wilson threw some gross picks, gross. Had some gross fumbles, had some really bad sacks. And that's the other thing. There's hidden stats in the game of quarterback play, in my opinion, that don't get shown light to. And Russell Wilson, I just can't get behind how he plays because it is very stat protective. He will take awful sacks to not throw an incompletion, save his completion percentage. That's been the case for years. People have been bitching about it forever. And I'm not trying to go at his head or whatever, but there are ways of watching these guys play that I know they're doing what they're doing because we talked about it in the quarterback room. I used to watch Russell Wilson film in the other quarterback rooms that I was in, and they're like, look, man, there he goes again, taking a sack instead of throwing it away, preserving that completion percentage. All that stuff gets forgotten when you look back at the end of the year. Russ had whatever percent, but it adds up, and those people know it adds up. And so I just think Justin Fields was playing to win games where Russell Wilson sometimes, sometimes he did, sometimes he didn't, but there was like this preservation aspect when I watched him play that I'm like, I just think there's a reason why they're putting Justin Fields in on 3rd and 4th down when the game's on the line, to be honest. So I think that, one, they've proven they can win games with him. 2, their defense, if they retool there, can be even crazier than ever. And it's just, that's a hard team to prepare for when all these other teams in the league are airing it out and spinning it around, whatever. And then you got Justin Fields. It's just a weird game for teams to prepare for. And he's a better athlete than people give him credit for. Like, it's kind of sneaky. So, I don't know. I think people can win with him. I think that he's only going to get better as a passer. He's never going to get worse, in my opinion. So, maybe he learned something from Russell Wilson to just toss it up really high in the air from time to time and hope your guy comes down with it. Because if you pull Russell Wilson's tape up right now and watched all of his touchdown cut-ups, his receivers were making plays. He was just giving them a chance. Where a lot of times Fields wasn't giving guys chances because he was trying to be too perfect. And that's the difference. Literally, that's like the most simple difference in what happened last year.
I love Fields, so I'm really glad to hear you say that because we argued about it last week, that it's kind of just been a situation thing for Fields. But with the draft coming up, that kind of leads us into the next point. We always hear, like, when teams are looking for a new quarterback and a new head coach, like, oh, they need an offensive-minded young head coach to pair with their new rookie quarterback. But, like, DeMeco Ryans, not an offensive guy. Yeah. Dan Quinn with Washington, not an offensive guy. Do you think there's some weight to be held in having that offensive minded head coach, or do you think it's kind of just who's going to be the best culture fit for the team?
It's the best culture fit. And I think, look, does it help having an offensive guy that is not going to get, like, poached, like, by another team if the offensive coordinator, like Ben Johnson, is doing really well and then he gets poached? Yeah, that helps. But who's going to be able to give the guy the most attention throughout the season and make sure he's the most prepared? And also, who's going to, like, come down to his level and collaborate with him versus speak to him and down on him? That's what it comes down to in the NFL. Some offensive coordinators are dictators. Some of them are collaborative work group kind of guys. And in my opinion, in my experience, the guys that are willing to hear out the starter, no matter how old or young he is, and call plays that guy's more comfortable with, those are the ones that are going to have success. I leave everything else out. I don't give a shit. Who's going to be the best guy for the job of calling plays but getting the quarterback ready and building the scheme around what that guy feels most comfortable with? Because a lot of times you look around the league and you're like, why does this offense have no rhythm, no consistency? The quarterback looks uncomfortable. Well, you could run the same exact type of throw 5 different ways, right? Like, I could drop back, play action fake, and throw the ball 20 yards downfield on the hash in rhythm, and that route concept could be 5 or 6 different things very easily. And some quarterbacks see a sail concept easier in their mind and read it easier than they see a dagger concept where it's an in-breaker. But those throws are damn near to the same exact spot if you close your eyes. And that is what I think some offensive coordinators have figured out and some haven't. Like, some guys see the game a certain way. And I was talking to a Ravens coach this past weekend. Like, Lamar Jackson.
Tell me who?
What's up?
I said, can you tell me which coach?
I'm not going to tell you who. I'm sorry. But he was just talking about how Lamar sees the game. And it's like, it's not like any other quarterback he's been around, but it works for him. And I'm like, shit, dude, if Lamar Jackson wasn't this freak talent that he is, would they have given him the chance to see the game he does young in his career? But now it's like, dude, it's incredible. Like, he sees spatial awareness and, like, he can offset throws that other guys wouldn't because he sees the game differently. And I'm like, damn, how many guys see the game differently that weren't able to see the game differently? And so those coordinators that allow these quarterbacks to be put in the best situation to feel comfortable and just be them, those are the ones, in my opinion, that have the most success. And that's why, like if you look in college, guys like Lincoln Riley, have they had the best team ever of recent years? No. Like, their defense isn't typically good. But they all, for the most part, have quarterbacks in the draft every single year that are coming out. And one thing that Lincoln Riley, in my opinion, that he does better than most other people is his offense looks different every single year, depending on who's at quarterback. His Kyler Murray offense looked different than his Jalen Hurts offense, which looked different than his Caleb Williams offense. And he grabs his quarterback and molds it around him. And it is what it is. He has his things he likes, but, like, he's not going to force a guy to do something he's not comfortable with or doesn't see clearly. And so I think you're seeing that more in these NFL systems to where, like, look at Jalen Hurts last year. Down the stretch, they got into things that he looked really comfortable in. Early on in the year, he didn't look comfortable at all dropping back and reading out layers of throws. However, he was really good at taking vertical shots and having good ball placement in one-on-one matchups. That's where he thrived. So what did they do? They ran the ball to get those one-high coverages to then throw vertical shots so he didn't have to try to win on first and second down versus, like, 2 high shell. Like, that's that's football. Like, and I think that some coaches are figuring it out and some aren't.
You talked about Lamar for a second, so I'm curious. What do you think the Ravens have to do, in your opinion, as a Ravens fan? I am curious from a quarterback's perspective. What does Lamar have to do to get over the hump? Because I get sick of the narrative of he's bad in the playoffs. In my opinion, I feel like he's gotten better.
Yeah.
But what do you see with Lamar? And, like, do you actually see him actually getting over that hump, or do you feel like it might be a consistent thing of this failure in the playoffs thing?
I think that he will get over the hump. I think they need to give him a real weapon. Like, his best two players on the field last year, besides Derrick Henry, who, say what you want, he had great rushing yards, but, like, he wasn't dynamic in the passing game, which in modern NFL, that's tough, right? Like, so that's one. Two, their best two players on the field besides them were their tight ends. Like, Isaiah Likely, in my opinion, was the best mismatch player on the field most of the time. And Mark Andrews, he fell down the stretch bad. Like, that was tough. But they should have won. They should have probably went to the Super Bowl. They would, in my opinion, if the Ravens would have played the Chiefs in that championship game, I think the Ravens would have waxed them. But, like, truthfully, as long as they don't fumble and do weird shit.
I don't believe in them that much.
I watch them from an outsider's view, and I'm like, dude, they're actually the best team. They just don't play like it sometimes.
And revenge is a funny thing because they would have had revenge from the previous year of losing in the AFC Championship.
Do you think that's coaching? Because a lot of people blame Harbaugh. Do you feel like it's like them not coming in prepared, or do you feel like they're like that runs into their minds of like, we've done this in the past, it's going to happen again?
I think that there is some of that like confirmation bias of like, oh shit, here we go again. It's happening. Like that's human nature. I think they need to find a way to get over that. And in my opinion, the Eagles got over that by just absolutely dominating up front on offense and defense. Not to mention, if you give Lamar Jackson a real competent defense for once, he'd probably be all right. Like, their defense for a stretch of the year gave up so many points and were just Swiss cheese. Like, you can only, in my opinion, no matter how good of a football player you are, Lamar Jackson being, in my opinion, the most talented in the league, you can only make Steph Curry type plays so often. Like, Steph Curry goes cold, but there's 90 games in a season or whatever it is. I don't know however many games there are in the NBA, right? Like, but you can only do it every night so often. And so if you do have an off night, which happens when there's one game a week, you need to have a team around you that's going to prop you up. And Lamar, in my opinion, played really well in that last game. He had that one fumble that sucked. Like, that was unfortunate. But besides that, he played really well, and he got him in a position at the end for them to have a chance, and they dropped it. And in my opinion, the one thing Lamar has not had in his entire career is a true number one X receiver. He has not. And no matter what way you spin it, they get the rebound guys, the rejects, or the guys that are like on the tail end of their career. Go get him a number one. Because I love Zay Flowers, but Zay Flowers was hurt. And Zay Flowers is a slot receiver. And in my opinion, slot receivers don't dominate games. X's do. Or even Z's, like other outside guys that go inside. But I'd imagine Lamar feels like, good God, it's on me. It's all on me. And if I don't do it, nobody else is going to, because they're going to load the box and stop Derrick Henry. But like, I got to go win. But my guys aren't getting separation. You know what I mean? It's like, and then my defense, shit, if they go up, like, our defense isn't going to stop them. I'd imagine that's where Lamar is kind of playing right now. And he needs more help around him. I know everyone wants to talk about, well, we got him Derrick Henry. Like, dude, Derrick Henry was great, but Derrick Henry also had inflated stats this year because Lamar was on the field.
If
you put Derrick Henry in another system, like, it's, you know what I mean?
He doesn't have 2,000 yards on any other team.
Right.
It does not happen.
No, and a lot of his runs were 2 yards, 2 yards, 2 yards, 2 yards, 70 yards because they loaded the box and they broke one in the fourth quarter. Like, if you look at like the actual per yard, like yards per rush, like, and remove the really, really long ones, it's like they weren't as efficient as you would think, which makes it hard to play quarterback. It's my opinion.
All right, $1 million question. Not the best, but who is your favorite quarterback to watch right now in the NFL?
Right now, probably Josh Allen. I think Josh has gotten like so much better as a passer, and even like everything down to his body mechanics. He just looks like he's in control of everything that goes on, and then he can also flip the switch and be a beast in the run game. I think that he's the most interesting man in football, if you want to call it that way, to watch.
Get him a bottle of Dos Equis, right?
Yes.
Would you take Lamar, Josh, for the next 5 years?
I'd take Lamar. Yeah.
It's the correct answer, but it's not the fun answer.
it's not. But like, if you put Lamar Jackson in Patrick Mahomes' situation over the start of his career, I think Lamar has 4 or 5 rings. Like, I think Josh has 2 or 3, maybe more. I don't know, but I just think like everyone wants to crown Mahomes the GOAT, and I think yes, he's earned a lot of the status of that, but he will be the first one to tell you, which he has, that his situation and his coaching staff and all of that has been a big reason of why he's had the success that he has. And I want to do the Carolina Panthers test. Which quarterback, if you put on the Panthers,
We have a Panthers
over the course of the season, how many games would they win? I think Lamar wins them the most games.
There are teams worse than us. Okay, chill out.
Debatable.
There's a couple. There's a couple worse than we are.
At least you're not picking number 1.
Yeah.
With Madden, because you play a ton of Madden, I am curious. Do you think NFL teams, because Eric DeCosta mentioned it like 2 weeks ago, that in their algorithms they use Madden to like rate a player or to go over a certain type of players, and then also with the Jets, they said that they go off of Madden ratings. Is that true? Like, or do you think it's just like for fun and games?
I don't think it's for fun and games. I do think like we're all like at the end of the day, you've got to think those people making those decisions are humans, and there's like self-doubt and like, am I really seeing it the right way? And they're going to gather as much information, no matter where they can get it from, as possible. And so I would not be shocked to see a percentage of it coming from Madden, because in all reality, the Madden devs, the Madden rating adjusters, they've done their homework. Right, wrong, or indifferent, I'd imagine more often than not they're somewhat reasonable. And I don't know. I think that we're all humans, no matter what level of football you're at, no matter how much importance you have in an organization, and people have self-doubt, so they're going to double-check their work with Madden, in my opinion. I don't think they're lying.
What's the most realistic aspects of Madden when reading a defense?
I would say the coverages. Like, Madden, for me, like, I mean, people now are using it to, like, teach the game and all that. Like, I am in a way, but other people are teaching their kids the basic coverages and, like, where the zone drops are. And I think that learning defense is definitely the best way to use Madden, because at the end of the day, in the NFL, like, all of these offenses, they run their plays play dependent on what the defense lines up in, both personnel-wise, front-wise, like everything. So very few plays in an NFL playbook on offense are even like, just call it and run it, just zone it off. Like, if it's 4 down front and it's a shade, then you're blocking this person. If it's slightly different, we're this. Like, so everything is like, wait and see what the defense does, then we react on offense for the most part. And so that's what you get to see on the defensive side in Madden. Like, you get to see the shells. You get to see where people might be blitzing from. You get to see how many people are in the box. Like, what are the numbers? What's the leverage? I do think, like, the pre-snap stuff is so good in Madden. There's always things to clean up as the game rolls on. And, like, I have a big gripe right now with their protection scheme, which, like, I'm going to help them this offseason fix because it's terrible. And so, like, protections are a little bit iffy. That's why DNs come free half the time on certain things. And there's, like, bug rushes and all that. But just basics of football, you can learn all of it in Madden. That's how I learned it. That's how, like, I didn't have an NFL or even, like, a college, like, family. None of that. I first wanted my family to go to college, first wanted to do football and all that stuff. But, like, I learned from Madden. My dad played Madden with me. And that's how I learned it. And then YouTube came around, which was sick. Watched so much Jay Cutler, Matt Stafford, and Aaron Rodgers film. Like, I watched it all. So between YouTube and Madden, I think you can learn just about anything. And then that's where, like, I made my book, the Football MBA, Think Like a Quarterback, to bring all of those visual tools together and, like, teach the game, like, X's and O's wise, like, succinctly. So there's still more to do. There's still more to learn. But I think that's such a good base to learn is through Madden.
Yeah, I see your content on Twitter all the time of you, talking about how you're gonna read this play in Madden, and you're like, yeah, X is gonna be open across the middle, and they're wide open, and I'm like, man, that looks fun. Let me hop on Madden. I get my ass kicked.
I know, because we
right off, dude.
It's so hard to play Madden now, just because, and maybe it's more fun if you do it the way that you do, but it's just over the years. How do you feel about Madden? Like, I just feel like it's gotten stale, and why do you think maybe that is?
I think that the game has a lot more animations than it used to, and, like, maybe not predetermined things, but there's a lot of, like, nuances to how games are made in general now that are, like, you need your X factor and you need your this and that. That's why I play more head to head than I play ultimate team, because I'm like just grabbing the guys that I have. I know their ratings. I'm not going to be stuck in like this linebacker's got lurker so he can jump 10 feet and pick me off. Like I'm not, you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to play X's and O's 3D chess. So that's why I like playing head to head mode. So I think a lot of the focus nowadays is on ultimate team, which I do think is fun too, but it's got its place. But I just think in general, it depends on how you use it. Like I'm not trying to go on a 100-game win streak and I'm not chewing clock the whole time and doing cheese plays. I'm like trying to teach. So you're going to run in though to these guys on head to head that are running 2 plays the whole game. And until you stop it, then they're going to go to their 3rd play and they're just trying to rack up wins. So I love that I don't have to do that because I know how to stop some of those things, but it does get frustrating, especially if you don't play all the time and you're like, is this shit ever going to end? So I would say it's more of the users and how they're playing the game and the access to like, this play's broken right now. Get in before they patch it.
Yeah,
so,
YouTube kind of ruins it now. It kind of ruined like Call of Duty and everything else too. I feel like video games are like on the downslope because of that, which stinks. But go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, I was just going to say before I do have some college-related questions. But before I do hop into that, I kind of wanted to know, we always see with a lot of these players coming out of college, scouts, media, everybody's asking them questions, telling them everything. Was there anything that was just way too inflated that you figured out, hey, this is not as important as what they're telling me? And then vice versa. Was there something that they didn't really hype up that you were like, wow, that was so important that I only got like a little tidbit of?
Are you asking from when I was a player or me doing interviews this time around?
You as a player.
I would say the thing that I hated the most was like, you saw that Jaden Daniels clip, I believe it was with Dabble last year, where he was like, yes. Why short or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, whatever. That shit was so overinflated because at the end of the day, when someone's repeating it to you and you've never heard it before, that's just a memorization game. There's no, like, why short doesn't mean anything. The formation doesn't mean anything. There's no, like, visual reference for you to remember things. Where when you're in an offense and a scheme and you've learned that ace means 2x2, you visually can look and be like, ace is 2x2. When he says why short, this guy's coming down. Where, like, when you have a coach, like, ace, why short, 2 jet, what, like, that shit doesn't mean anything because you don't know the language. And that stuff really pissed me off because I had a coach do that to me and I'm like, what, do you want me to fucking play hooked on phonics, like remembering what you're saying? Or do you want me to teach me what the ace means and what the jet means and all of this? Because that's how I learned the game. And so when I got to the NFL, that was the one thing that I'm like, you guys need to stop fucking doing that because none of you even played. Like those people that do that are the ones, in my opinion, that didn't really play. Because the ones that actually played are asking the meaningful questions like, okay, like at quarterback, like, why'd you use this 3-step drop versus this 3-step and hitch here? Like, what were you thinking? Were you coached to do that? Because if you're coached to do that, then I can fix that. But if not, like, I want to know why. That's like all the questions that I would be asking are the whys, not like these fake ass questions to try to go viral and be funny and like make a guy feel bad. Because everybody learns different, everybody processes different, and like I guarantee you, Jaden Daniels is laughing at Dabble right now for doing that stuff. And he's probably gonna lose his job at some point this year. So it's just like, I can't get down, and I've never even met the guy, but I can't get down when people do that type of stuff to guys because I'm like, let's see you throw a football. Like, I would love to see him throw a football, let alone, like, that's his offense, which is his language. It's like Spanish and, like, Portuguese. Like, if I speak Spanish and someone comes, like, speaking Portuguese to me, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, and it even gets down to, like, different dialects. So when I went from Green Bay to San Francisco, Matt LaFleur was under Shanahan in the same scheme. And when Matt LaFleur broke off, he changed shit to terminology that he liked. And when I went to San Francisco, I assumed that the terminology from Green Bay was the same, and it wasn't. It was like somewhat the same, but it was like a different dialect. And I'm like, damn, dude, if I came in here day one and like nobody explained to me that like a rope in this protection is actually a ram in this protection and vice versa, I would have looked stupid, like calling audibles at the line of scrimmage. And people are like, no, like you can't do that. So it's just like so much of it has like nuance to it that these coaches think it's just fun and games. 1 second. I got a puppy that's just yapping.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Yeah, I guess couple last questions. Just
Yeah.
like I said, going back to your college days, I'm a former Terp grad, so you being from Maryland, I gotta ask, what went into the decision for East Carolina and then eventually transferring over to UVA? And I have to ask, did Maryland recruit you at all?
Yeah. Well, I went to high school in Maryland for my first year and a half, and then I moved to Florida, South Florida, to finish out high school. I've moved back and forth a bunch in my life between the two states, and so East Carolina offered me, and they had Lincoln Riley at the time and Ruffin McNeil, who I loved what they were doing. They're like, look, you're going to come in, we're going to throw the ball 60 times a game, we're going to put up some numbers, and you're going to go be a gunslinger. I was like, sign me up. Lincoln Riley ended up leaving after 2 years to go to Oklahoma, and then I was going to be the starter my redshirt sophomore year, but I tore my ACL in practice 7 days before my first start. Whole staff got fired at the end of that season because we didn't have a great year. I got hurt. They brought in a new guy, and then I was recovering from injury and went through spring ball, and in my mind and in all my teammates' minds, I had won the job, and it was no question. And I went into the coach's office, and he was like, hey, just so you know, loved it, but we're going to go into camp as a 2-quarterback system. We want to keep all you guys around. I'm like, all right, I'm out. And they were like, what do you mean you're out? You're not leaving. They didn't think I'd do it because I'd never played. I played in 2 games, in reserve time. So they're like, you're not going to have any interest on the open market. People don't even know who you are. You came off an ACL. I said, bet. And so I ended up transferring to Virginia, where the old head coach went as a D-line coach, and I knew they had a bad quarterback situation. And same thing, I'd have to go there and compete from day one in training camp. And I'm like, if I'm going to compete in both places, I'm going to go to the ACC program, because if I want to go to the NFL, I gotta be able to win a job anywhere. So let me go to the better school, status-wise, and I'm going to go get my master's from UVA in the process, just in case. And so that's why I left. And then we had such a bad team, but I played well, had some good teammates that helped me out, and ended up making it to the league. So that's how I went there. Didn't have any interest from Maryland, unfortunately. I was also a late bloomer in high school. I grew a lot my last few years. I was young for my grade. I went to spring ball. You can early enroll. I early enrolled, so I was 17 in my freshman year of college classes. So at that time, if I could go back and redo it all, I would have gotten held back. I would have taken a redshirt year. I would have done everything to be older and play.
Had 7 COVID years, been 27.
Dude, they didn't even give me my year back for tearing my ACL, let alone now guys get 9 years. I'm you've got to be shitting me.
Well, you mentioned kind of the landscape of college, and what are your thoughts now with the transfer portal the way it is, and NIL, and obviously we're talking about COVID and how these guys have gotten a bunch of other years.
We saw it too with Shadur. I mean, sorry to interrupt before that, but there's reports coming off that Sanders comes off as arrogant and cocky because he's already a millionaire, and the way he grew up, and we're seeing a lot of that now with NIL stuff. Do you think that kind of affects people looking at players going into the NFL now? Or?
Dude, it affects everything. And I think, too, that's one of the things that really bothered me when I was early in the NFL. You have so many coaches that didn't play, that were, assistants, or, they just didn't play football. They didn't play even, Division I football. But when you're an undrafted guy or, a late-round guy, they speak down on you, so heavily, trying to, big dog you. Where, in reality, I'm dude, I'm in the league. I'm here for a reason because the GM thought I could do something, but you have coaches that you're dealing with that are I don't know. It's just it's a really weird dynamic. So I actually think it's swinging in the right direction to where no, these dudes should have been millionaires in college because they're making these universities a lot of money. So just rightfully so, they're very important in their profession and whatever they do. And so I think that it's probably swung a little bit too far, but I do think you're not going to be able to talk to Shadur the same way that you would have talked to Trevor Lawrence a couple of years ago as a coach, or you won't be able to speak down to these guys because they're they're grown men, they're 22, 23, they're men at that point in time, and they have money in their bank accounts. They don't need you, and now let's just figure out how to be a good football team. And I think when you can cut through some of that stuff that exists in the business of sports, I actually think there's going to be more good that comes from than not. I think there's obviously extreme cases of it, but I don't know. I just think some of these players, when they get in, especially me, there's so many guys like me that get taken advantage of on how they're spoken to and spoken down to and all this and that kind of dampers the NFL experience. I'm not saying it's like that everywhere, but you talk to guys and you're like, man, like this guy was fucking terrible to me for 3 years. And then all of a sudden I make a play and I'm a starter and I get a second contract and they pay me $30 million. They talk to me different. I'm like, I'm no different before I signed that contract than after I signed that contract as a human. And I just think I think it's a really good thing just for like the humanity of the game that like, let's just make it about ball. And when it's not about money anymore, because these guys already have money, then you can have real conversations about like, you don't have to kiss someone's ass. You're not like trying to ego somebody. It's just, you guys know how it goes in the business world. Like this shit exists everywhere, whether it's professional sports, like at a 9 to 5 or whatever. You got the upper executives that big dog you. Some of them are great, some of them aren't. And it's no different in professional sports. And I think that for me was one of the things that I realized very early, like, whoa, like there's a whole nother game within this game that exists that nobody really talks about.
Yeah. All right. Last question, and then we'll let you go. Is Cam Ward or Shedeur? If you had a choice to take one, I love Shedeur. That's like my number one quarterback. But I'm curious on which one and why. I'm
taking Cam.
Gunslinger.
I'm taking Cam every day of the week.
That makes sense.
I also think that like there's just certain intangibles and talent that Cam has that Shedeur just doesn't have in his bag of tricks. And if you look at Cam too, he's built a certain way. Like he can sling it a certain way. He has insane arm talent to where he can make, like, no lie, when you watch Cam Ward throw, he makes some Stafford type throws. And not every year in the draft do you see a guy that can like manipulate his arm angle like Stafford and Mahomes. And Cam Ward is like in that mold of quarterback. Like in my opinion, Cam Ward's a better prospect coming out right now than Patrick Mahomes was. Like just arm talent wise, ability wise, like nothing against Pat. Obviously, he's one of the best to ever do it. But if you're just looking like at the tape and comparing apples to apples of where they were coming out, I saw some throws from Cam and I'm like, holy shit, he's cocky in how he throws this, but he's putting it exactly how he wants to, and he's just flicking it there. And there's a talent around that to where, like, if you look at guys like Sam Darnold. Like Sam Darnold, in my opinion, his whole body has to be, for the most part, in a really good spot to make the throws. Sometimes he can get away with like a whip throw or whatever, but then you swing to the other side, Stafford could have nothing in alignment ever. And he knows his arm well enough to know what it takes to get the ball from point A to point B, and Cam has that. It's like, if you could put an attribute on that, I don't know what you call that, but
spontaneity.
Yeah, like it's different than arm talent. It's like arm manipulation of like point A to point B. Whatever that is, Cam has that. It's a checked box. So I'm like, you can't teach that, and that doesn't come around every year. So I think that is worth its weight in alone as the number one pick, especially with the Titans being in a weak-ass division. I'm like, look at how fast C.J. Stroud flipped that. Like, if you don't take Cam Ward and you take Abdul Carter, number one overall, you're going to get fired next year because Will Levis is not going to get you to the playoffs. It's just not going to happen. I think Will Levis could do it on a different team that has better team around him, but you need a guy like Cam Ward that can elevate. And I don't think Shedeur's the elevation kind of guy either. I think the best thing that could happen to Shedeur, in my opinion, is he falls in the draft late first round, somewhere in the second round, and goes to a team that doesn't need a quarterback right now, but he can develop. And not saying develop like, I don't think his upside's very high. I just think like get into a system and be a guy that's efficient. I think he can totally do that. He could be a Geno Smith type of guy. But it took Geno 7 or 8 years and not worth a first-round pick.
Right.
Yeah, that was actually the comparison I think that I gave the most was like somewhere in between like a Joe Burrow and Geno Smith for Shedeur.
Yeah, and I don't think that from what I see that Shedeur has that Joe Burrow in him. Like Joe,
we'll differ there. I think he's got the accuracy. I think that's why I love Shedeur so much. I think he's the best pure passer, and most. And in the offense that he played in Colorado, at least to me, it looks like it's the most NFL-ready offense. I think that's why I like Shedeur more than I do Cam, because Cam,
I don't
feels
disagree
like he holds
with
the
you.
ball forever.
Like, I think Shedeur could very well Brock Purdy his way onto a team where it's like he's good in practice, he's efficient, you know what you're going to get out of him, and some coaches love that. They love that like predictability, and you know he's not going to miss across the middle or whatever. But I think like taking a top 10 pick, there's like a massive opportunity cost of if you don't get a guy with a crazy upside like a Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, in my opinion, Cam Ward has some of that, then you go that Bryce Young route, in my opinion. Sorry, I hate doing it to you.
It's okay.
But like I would
played
never
really
in a
well
million
the back
years
half of the year. It's okay.
I would never have taken Bryce Young with the number 1 overall pick because he doesn't have the X factor, whatever, that warrants not getting a top 10 DN, not getting a top 10 receiver or a lineman. Like, you've got to have some it, in my opinion. And I don't think Shedeur has like an it. I think he's worth a solid pick and he could go start for a team. But I don't think he's like, same thing. If you mix guys around, I think that Shedeur would be great for the Detroit Lions. I think he could end up being better than Jared Goff. I don't think that Shedeur could go to Baltimore and win them games. Like, I think that Cam could. You know what I mean? And that's where I'm like, when I talk about quarterbacks on Twitter, it's so situational because it's like, dude, if Kyler Murray could ever get out of Arizona, we might all talk about him entirely different. Truthfully,
he'd be top 5 or 6, man. I love.
You know what I'm
Kyler.
saying?
I
Like,
love Kyler's game.
I think he could be so good, but it's really damn hard to be perfect and then some every single week for your team to win games.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I think if you put Kyler Murray in San Francisco instead of Brock Purdy, Kyler's better than Brock. And they probably win a Super Bowl 2 years ago. Straight up. So, and nothing against Brock. It's his situation. He's owning it. It is what it is. But like, nothing is on an even playing field at all. And I think we have got to recognize that in the draft process, in the free agent process, when we're talking about teams and quarterbacks. Like, I make my quarterback rankings every so often, and I try to bring all of that into account. And that's why I just can never put Jared Goff top 5. Like, it will never happen. Because if you put, I could pick 10 guys at quarterback, in my opinion, that could go to Detroit and get them to at least the game before the NFC Championship game with that roster.
Makes sense. And you were talking about contracts and everything with quarterbacks earlier on, and Brock Purdy's on the precipice here of getting that major contract. And
yeah,
I'm gonna have to guess here on what your opinion might be on that, but
I don't know how they pay him more than like $40 million, and I'm like, I still think like 30 would be great, but
it will never happen though.
You know what I mean? Yeah, because he's the starting guy. He's gonna get probably 45, 50. They're gonna be like, well, if Tua got this and Tua's not,
and Dak,
like, I'm like, yeah, you know what I mean? It's just
the quarterback market is just screwed up. I think there has to be a team at some point that says, like, the 49ers have an opportunity to say, like, we think Brock is great, but I would much rather keep our core together and go and draft a guy or go and pick up somebody. It's going to take a team to actually do that and follow through, and then I think other teams will follow suit. It just has to be proven. It's a copycat league.
It is.
Green Bay does it well. They just do it whenever their quarterbacks are getting older. I mean, exactly.
They just draft them in the first round.
Yeah.
Kurt, thank you so much.
Yeah.
We appreciate the conversation. I love getting a former NFL quarterback's perspective. Also, link down below is going to be the Dime Lab.
Let's go.
Go buy one. They are awesome. I will vouch for these. And
also
make sure to go subscribe to Kurt's YouTube channel where he breaks down the game of football through Madden, which is awesome as well. Film breakdowns as well, I believe, which have been awesome. I go and watch those as well. Kurt, once again, thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, man.
Sweet. Same to you guys. Thanks for having me. I'll catch you guys next time.
See ya.
Thanks, Kurt.
Thank you, Kurt.